Hashtag they killed a diplomat. Unaware his wife was a Special Forces operative, the Galactic Council chambers buzzed with nervous energy as Ambassador Marcus Chun straightened his formal diplomatic robes. Around him, representatives from dozens of species whispered in their native tongues, creating a symphony of clicks, growls, and harmonic tones that had become familiar over his 3-year station on Nexus Prime. Marcus had always been good at his job. Where others saw insurmountable differences between species, he found common ground. His patient demeanor and genuine curiosity about alien cultures had earned him respect across the galaxy. What most didn't know was that his wife Sarah had taught him to read micro-expressions and body language during her brief retirement from military service. The Zephyrian delegation sat in their designated section, their insectoid features impossible for humans to read, but Marcus had learned to watch the subtle movements of their antennae. Today, something was wrong. The usual diplomatic courtesy was absent, replaced by an aggressive posture he'd only seen during the failed trade negotiations with the Corvan Empire last year. The human expansion into the Outer Rim sectors must cease immediately, announced High Counselor Zektar, his mandibles clicking with agitation. Your species violates sacred breeding grounds with reckless abandon. Marcus stood slowly, activating his universal translator with practiced ease. He prepared for this moment. The recent human colonization efforts had indeed encroached on territories the Zephyrians considered holy, but the surveys had shown no signs of active use. It was a misunderstanding that diplomacy could resolve. Honored Counselor, Marcus began, his voice carrying the careful modulation he'd perfected over years of negotiations. The colonial administration was unaware of the cultural significance of those systems. We propose a joint archaeological survey to properly identify all sacred sites, followed by relocation assistance for any affected colonies. The chamber fell silent. Even the perpetually chattering Melodian representatives stopped their harmonic discussions. Marcus felt the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him, some curious, others calculating. Zektar's antennae twitched in what Marcus recognized as barely controlled fury. Your kind always speaks of solutions after the damage is done. The spawning cycles have been disrupted. 17 generations of genetic memory contaminated by your crude terraforming equipment. The accusation hit harder than Marcus expected. If true, the human colonies had inadvertently caused ecological damage that could take centuries to repair. But the initial surveys had been thorough, conducted by xenobiologists with impeccable credentials. I understand your concern, Marcus replied, pulling up holographic data on his diplomatic tablet. However, our preliminary scans detected no active biological processes in those sectors. Perhaps there was a miscommunication between our survey teams and the territorial markers. The suggestion of Zephyrian incompetence sparked immediate outrage. Several insectoid delegates rose from their seats, their wings buzzing in harmonic distress calls. Marcus realized his mistake too late. In trying to find a face-saving solution for both sides, he'd inadvertently insulted their navigation capabilities. Zektar's compound eyes fixed on Marcus with predatory intensity. You dare suggest we cannot mark our own sacred spaces? That our young were abandoned to die because we lack basic territorial instincts? The Thoraxian ambassador, a reptilian species known for their neutrality, attempted to interject. Perhaps we could examine the survey data together to understand where the confusion originated. But the diplomatic momentum had shifted. Marcus felt the familiar tightening in his chest that preceded difficult negotiations. Sarah had taught him to recognize when rational discussion was giving way to emotional escalation. The key was to de-escalate without appearing weak or dismissive. Counselor Zektar, Marcus said, his tone carefully measured. No insult was intended. Human diplomatic protocols clearly state that any territorial disputes should be resolved through joint investigation. We're prepared to halt all expansion into the disputed sectors pending a thorough review. For a moment, the chamber seemed to balance on the edge of resolution. Several neutral delegates nodded approvingly at Marcus's concession. The human position was reasonable, offering immediate action to address Zephyrian concerns. Then, Zektar spoke words that would echo through the galaxy for generations. Human promises are worthless. Your species respects only strength, not sacred law. Perhaps it's time you learn the consequences of defiling what others hold dear. The formal session ended abruptly as the Zephyrian delegation filed out in formation. Marcus remained at his podium, reviewing the exchange in his mind. He'd handled worse diplomatic crises before. This felt different, though. There was a finality to Zektar's words that suggested the conversation was far from over. Later that evening, Marcus sat in his quarters reviewing intelligence briefings about recent Zephyrian military movements. As a diplomat, he wasn't privy to most classified information, but certain patterns were becoming visible even in public shipping manifests. Weapons purchases from neutral arms dealers, increased communication traffic between Zephyrian worlds, and several mercenary organizations. His personal communicator chimed with an encrypted message from Earth. Sarah's face appeared on the screen. Her expression warmed despite the secure military facility visible behind her. "Hey, stranger," she said, her voice carrying across the light years with only minimal delay. "How did the big meeting go?" Marcus found himself smiling despite his concerns. Even after 8 years of marriage, Sarah's presence could calm his nerves like nothing else. She wore her military fatigues with casual confidence, her auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun that somehow made her green eyes even more striking. "Could have gone better," he admitted. "The Zephyrians are more upset about the Outer Rim colonies than our intelligence suggested. I think we're looking at formal sanctions, possibly trade restrictions." Sarah's expression shifted subtly. Marcus had learned to recognize when her special forces training kicked in. She was analyzing threat levels, calculating response scenarios, probably running through contingency plans he couldn't even imagine. "How upset are we talking?" she asked. "Diplomatic protests, or something more serious?" "I'm not sure yet." Their language was more aggressive than usual, and there are reports of increased military activity in their border systems. Could be posturing, could be preparation for actual conflict. They talked for another 20 minutes about inconsequential things. Sarah's new assignment, training recruits at the classified facility on Luna. Marcus's attempts to learn the Thraxian language. The garden Sarah was planning for when Marcus returned to Earth. Neither mentioned the obvious danger Marcus faced as humanity's primary diplomatic representative in a potentially hostile alien alliance. They both signed up for careers that put them in harm's way. It was an unspoken understanding between them. After ending the call, Marcus poured himself a glass of genuine Earth whiskey, a luxury that cost more than most diplomats' monthly salaries. The amber liquid reminded him of home, of quiet evenings with Sarah discussing everything except their respective jobs. The attack came 3 days later. Marcus was reviewing trade agreements in his office when the building's security systems activated. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red as blast doors sealed the diplomatic corridor. His assistant, a young Melodian named Chorus, burst through the outer door with panic in her harmonic voice. "Ambassador, there are armed ships approaching the station. The Council Guard is mobilizing, but the attackers are broadcasting Zephyrian identification codes." Marcus felt his diplomatic training take over, suppressing the immediate surge of adrenaline. If the Zephyrians were making their move, it meant the situation had escalated beyond anything the intelligence services had predicted. "Are they responding to communication attempts?" he asked, already moving toward the secure communication array in his office. "Negative, sir. They've jammed all standard diplomatic channels. The only transmission is a recorded message demanding your immediate surrender for crimes against Zephyrian sovereignty." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. After years of successful negotiations, his career might end because of a colonial survey error. He activated the embassy's emergency protocols, triggering automated distress signals that would reach Earth within hours. The first explosion shook the entire station. Through his reinforced window, Marcus could see Zephyrian fighters engaging the Council Guard's patrol ships. The insectoid vessels moved with organic fluidity, their biomechanical hulls shifting and adapting to incoming fire. "Sir, we need to move to the secure shelter," Chorus said, her harmonics shifting into urgent minor keys. "The attackers are targeting this section specifically." Marcus grabbed the emergency diplomatic pouch containing critical documents and communication codes. As they moved through the corridors, he couldn't help but think about Sarah's reaction when she learned what had happened. She'd probably blame herself for not being there to protect him. The second explosion was much closer. The corridor lights flickered as the station's artificial gravity fluctuated. Through the chaos, Marcus heard something that chilled him more than the approaching enemy ships. Zephyrian biosignatures were detected inside the station. The attack wasn't just an external assault. They'd boarded Nexus Prime. The boarding pods had struck the diplomatic quarter with surgical precision. Marcus realized this wasn't a crime of passion or political theater. Someone had planned this operation with intimate knowledge of Nexus Prime's layout and security protocols. "The shelter is compromised," Chorus whispered, her harmonics barely audible above the sound of cutting tools working through blast doors. They knew exactly where to breach the station's hull. Marcus felt his diplomatic composure cracking. Someone within the council structure had provided intelligence to the Zephyrians. The attack wasn't just about territorial disputes or sacred breeding grounds. This was something far more calculated. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows as they moved through maintenance corridors Marcus had never known existed. Chorus proved surprisingly resourceful, leading him through service passages that bypassed the main diplomatic routes where Zephyrian soldiers would be searching. "How do you know about these passages?" Marcus asked as they crawled through a ventilation shaft barely wide enough for human shoulders. "My species built the harmony resonators throughout this station," Chorus explained, her voice carrying through the confined space. "We know every acoustic pathway, every structural vibration point. The Zephyrians may have blueprints, but they don't understand the musical architecture. They emerged into a cargo bay used primarily for storing diplomatic gifts and cultural artifacts. Around them, items from dozens of worlds created a maze of alien artistry and technology. Marcus recognized a ceremonial sword from the Corvin Empire, a crystalline memory bank from the Ethereal Collective, even a primitive earth sculpture Sarah had commissioned for his office. The sound of approaching Zephyrian soldiers grew louder. Their biomechanical armor created a distinctive clicking rhythm as they moved through the station's corridors. Marcus counted at least 12 individuals based on the acoustic patterns. "They're conducting a systematic search," he realized. "This isn't random violence. They want me alive." Chorus's harmonics shifted into frequencies Marcus had learned indicated deep concern among her people. "Ambassador, there's something you should know. The Zephyrians have been asking questions about human military capabilities for months. Specifically, they've been inquiring about your personal background." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. His marriage to Sarah wasn't classified information, but her specific military assignments were highly restricted. If the Zephyrians had been investigating him personally, they might know more about human special forces capabilities than anyone realized. "What kind of questions?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer would be troubling. "Procurement requests for information about human family structures, mating bonds, psychological profiles of military spouses." The requests came through legitimate diplomatic channels, presented as cultural research for improved relations. Marcus felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. The Zephyrians hadn't just planned an assassination. They'd been studying him, learning about human emotional attachments and family bonds. This wasn't about territorial disputes. This was about sending a message to humanity that nowhere was safe, that even their most protected diplomats could be reached. The cargo bay's main door began to glow as cutting tools worked through the security lock. Marcus estimated they had maybe 2 minutes before the Zephyrian soldiers broke through. "Is there another way out?" he asked. Chorus pointed toward what appeared to be a solid wall decorated with a mural depicting the founding of the Galactic Council. "Emergency evacuation pod" behind the artwork. "But, Ambassador, if they've compromised our security this thoroughly, they'll have ships waiting to intercept any escape attempt." The cutting sounds grew more intense. Sparks began to shower from the door as the Zephyrian tools found the final security barrier. Marcus made a decision that would have made Sarah proud. Instead of running, he chose to gather intelligence. If he was going to die here, at least he could ensure the information reached Earth. "Chorus, I need you to record everything that happens next," he said, activating his diplomatic recorder and placing it in her hands. "Whatever they want from me, humanity needs to know about it." The Melodian's harmonics shifted into what Marcus recognized as a funeral dirge. "I will sing your story across the stars, Ambassador. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten." The door exploded inward with controlled precision. Zephyrian soldiers moved through the breach in perfect formation, their biomechanical armor adapting to the cargo bay's lighting conditions. Marcus stepped into the open, hands raised in the universal gesture of surrender. High Counselor Zektar emerged from behind his soldiers, his compound eyes reflecting the emergency lighting in kaleidoscopic patterns. Up close, Marcus could see modifications to his exoskeleton that weren't present during the diplomatic session. Combat lancement. Weapon implants. This wasn't just a politician anymore. Ambassador Marcus Chun, Zektar said, his voice carrying new harmonics that suggested satisfaction. Your species' tendency toward heroic gestures is well documented in our cultural files. Thank you for making this easier. If you wanted to kill me, you could have used long-range weapons, Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. What do you really want? Zektar's antennae twitched with what Marcus had learned to recognize as amusement among his species. Death will be too simple, too clean. We want your mate to know that we can reach anyone, anywhere. That human arrogance has consequences that extend beyond political negotiations. The words confirmed Marcus's worst fears. This wasn't about him personally. The Zephyrians were targeting Sarah through him, trying to demonstrate that even humanity's most elite soldiers couldn't protect what they loved. Sarah won't negotiate with terrorists, Marcus said. You don't understand human psychology if you think grief will make her more compliant. On the contrary, Zektar replied, we understand human psychology perfectly. Your mate's military file makes fascinating reading. Did you know she once spent 6 months infiltrating a pirate stronghold to rescue a single civilian hostage? The psychological profile suggests she values individual lives above strategic considerations. Marcus felt his blood turn cold. Classified information about Sarah's missions should have been impossible for the Zephyrians to access. Either there was a leak at the highest levels of human government, or alien intelligence capabilities were far more sophisticated than anyone had realized. The soldiers began restraining Marcus with biomechanical bonds that adapted to his physiology. The restraints weren't just meant to hold him. They were designed to monitor his vital signs, emotional state, even brain activity. Whatever the Zephyrians planned, they wanted to document his psychological condition in real time. The beauty of this plan, Zektar continued, is that your death will serve multiple purposes. It eliminates a troublesome diplomat, demonstrates our capability to strike at the heart of human power, and provides valuable data about how your species responds to psychological warfare. As they prepared to transport him from the cargo bay, Marcus caught sight of Chorus hiding behind a massive Thoraxian sculpture. The Melodian was still recording. Her harmonics shifted into frequencies that would carry the information through the station's acoustic systems to other members of her species. At least someone would know what really happened here. The Zephyrian transport ship was a marvel of biomechanical engineering. Living metal walls pulsed with organic rhythms, while technological systems integrated seamlessly with biological components. Marcus found himself sealed in a holding cell that monitored his every breath while providing just enough comfort to keep him alive and aware. Through the transparent walls, he could see Nexus Prime growing smaller as they departed. The diplomatic station that had been his home for 3 years was now just another point of light against the cosmic backdrop. Somewhere on that station, if Chorus had survived, a message was already spreading through Melodian communication networks toward Earth. Sarah would know soon, and, knowing his wife, she would respond exactly as the Zephyrians expected. That was their mistake. The Zephyrians understood human psychology well enough to predict Sarah's emotional reaction. But they had no comprehension of what happened when that emotion was filtered through years of special forces training and enhanced by grief-fueled determination. Marcus smiled grimly as he settled in for what would likely be his final journey. The aliens had just declared war on the most dangerous human in the galaxy. They simply didn't know it yet. Lieutenant Colonel Sarachan was reviewing training reports when the priority alert chimed through her secure terminal. The classification header alone was enough to make her stomach drop. Immediate family emergency, diplomatic incident. The message was brief and devastating. Marcus had been taken by Zephyrian forces during an attack on Nexus Prime. Diplomatic channels were being explored. All military family members were advised to maintain normal routines pending further information. Sarah read the message 3 times before its full implications registered. Then, she calmly saved her work, locked her terminal, and walked to her quarters with the measured pace of someone who had just declared personal war on an alien species. Her apartment was spartanly decorated, containing only essentials and a few personal items that mattered. Photos of Marcus from their wedding, vacation trips, to Luna's observation domes, quiet moments at home on Earth. On her desk sat his latest gift, a crystal formation from one of the outer rim colonies that somehow captured and reflected light in patterns that reminded her of his smile. Sarah allowed herself exactly 5 minutes to feel the full weight of grief and rage. She sat on their bed, holding one of Marcus's shirts, breathing in the faint scent that still lingered from his last visit home. 5 minutes to be a wife who had just lost everything that mattered. Then, she became something else entirely. The first call went to General Harrison, her direct superior, and one of the few people who knew the full extent of her classified capabilities. The conversation was brief and professional. "Sir, requesting immediate emergency leave for family crisis." "Sarah, I saw the report. I'm sorry. Take all the time you need. If there's anything the service can do to help with diplomatic efforts." "Actually, sir, there is something. I need access to my sealed personnel files and authorization to review Zephyrian intelligence assessments." The pause on the other end lasted several seconds. "That's outside normal protocols for family emergency situations." "With respect, sir, this isn't a normal situation. My husband was taken by hostile aliens who somehow had access to classified information about his personal background. I believe this incident may have implications for operational security that extend beyond diplomatic channels." Another pause. "Report to my office in 1 hour. Bring your security clearance updates." The second call was more difficult. Marcus's parents deserved to know what had happened before they saw it on the news feeds. His mother's reaction was exactly what Sarah expected. Tears, questions about rescue efforts, demands to know what the government was doing. She answered honestly while revealing nothing classified. Yes, diplomatic efforts were underway. No, there was no timeline for resolution. Yes, she would keep them informed as the situation developed. She didn't mention that diplomatic efforts had approximately 0 chance of success, or that she had no intention of waiting for government bureaucrats to negotiate Marcus's release. The third call went to a number that officially didn't exist, routed through communication networks that appeared on no public directory. The voice that answered was distorted by multiple layers of encryption. "Phoenix Actual. Raptor 6. Authorization Tango 77 Alpha. Authentication confirmed. Status: personal emergency. Requesting immediate consultation with available assets. Understood. Safe House Delta in 6 hours. Standard protocols." The call ended without pleasantries or explanations. Phoenix Group operated outside normal military structures, handling situations that required capabilities the regular armed forces couldn't officially acknowledge. Sarah had worked with them on 3 missions that remained classified above her own clearance level. General Harrison's office was located deep within Luna Base's most secure section. The walls were lined with awards, commendations, and photographs from a career spanning 40 years of military service. Harrison himself was a legend among Special Forces personnel, known for his ability to get impossible missions approved through official channels. "The intelligence reports make interesting reading," he said without preamble, sliding a tablet across his desk. "The Zephyrians have been conducting very sophisticated intelligence gathering operations against human diplomatic personnel for at least 18 months. Sarah scanned the summary data, her mind automatically cataloging threat assessments and operational implications. The scope was larger than she'd expected. The aliens hadn't just targeted Marcus. They'd built detailed psychological profiles on dozens of human officials and their families. They're not just planning isolated incidents, she realized. This is preparation for systematic psychological warfare against our entire diplomatic corps. That's our assessment as well. The attack on your husband appears to be a field test of their capabilities. If successful, they'll likely escalate to targeting other high-value individuals. Sarah set down the tablet and met Harrison's gaze directly. "Sir, what are the official plans for response?" "The Secretary of State is coordinating with the Galactic Council to impose economic sanctions on the Zephyrian Alliance. The Joint Chiefs are developing contingency plans for military escort of diplomatic personnel. Standard escalation protocols. How long will that take?" 6 to 8 months for meaningful implementation. Sarah nodded. Marcus doesn't have 6 to 8 months, sir. Harrison leaned back in his chair, studying her with the expression she'd learned meant he was shifting from official business to unofficial conversation. Off the record, Colonel, what are you thinking? Off the record, sir, I'm thinking the Zephyrians made a critical error in their intelligence assessment. They understand human psychology well enough to predict emotional responses, but they fundamentally misunderstand what happens when you combine that emotion with special forces training. And on the record? On the record, I'm requesting extended emergency leave to deal with family crisis, with the understanding that I may need to travel outside normal military jurisdiction. Harrison was quiet for several moments, reviewing something on his personal display that Sarah couldn't see. Finally, he opened a secure drawer and removed a small device she didn't recognize. This conversation never happened, he said, placing the device on his desk. But if a hypothetical Special Forces operative were planning a hypothetical unauthorized rescue mission, she might find this hypothetical communication scrambler useful for avoiding unwanted attention from monitoring systems. Sarah picked up the device, noting its alien design. Sir, this isn't human technology. No, it's not. Captured from a Corvin raiding party 2 years ago. Works on most known scanning systems, including Zephyrian biosensors. Hypothetically, she slipped the device into her uniform pocket. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. And Sarah, when you bring him home, make sure the aliens understand that humanity protects its own. The Phoenix Group's safe house was disguised as an asteroid mining facility in the outer belt. Sarah's shuttle docked with what appeared to be a standard industrial platform, but the internal configuration was clearly military. Weapon emplacements, sensor arrays, and defensive systems that could have protected a small fleet. Commander Blake was waiting in the briefing room, along with 2 other operatives Sarah recognized from previous missions. The holographic display showed real-time intelligence about Zephyrian fleet movements and communication intercepts. The good news is we've located your husband, Blake said without preamble. The bad news is where they're keeping him. The display shifted to show a massive biomechanical structure orbiting a gas giant in Zephyrian space. The station was clearly designed for research purposes, with multiple laboratories and holding facilities extending from a central hub like organic appendages. Research Station Hive 7, Blake continued. Primary function appears to be xenobiology and psychological warfare development. Heavy defenses, both technological and biological. No known weaknesses in their security systems. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind automatically calculating approach vectors and infiltration routes. The station's organic design made it difficult to predict structural vulnerabilities, but it also suggested possible weaknesses in electronic security. What kind of research are they conducting? She asked. Psychological conditioning experiments on captured subjects from various species. Based on communication intercepts, they're trying to develop techniques for large-scale mental manipulation. Your husband appears to be their first human test subject. The revelation hits Sarah like a physical blow. The Zephyrians weren't just holding Marcus for political leverage. They were using him as a laboratory specimen. Her anger shifted into something colder and more focused. Marcus had always said that Sarah was most dangerous when she became completely calm. I need a ship, she said. Something fast, stealthy, and capable of independent operation in hostile space. Blake smiled grimly. I thought you might. We have something special in the lower bay that officially doesn't exist. But, Sarah, this is a suicide mission. Even if you reach the station, extraction will be nearly impossible. Commander, with respect, you don't understand the situation. This isn't about extraction. This is about sending a message that will prevent future attacks on human diplomatic personnel. What kind of message? Sarah's expression became the same focused calm that had made her legendary among Special Forces instructors. The kind that makes an entire species reconsider their assumptions about human capabilities. The ship, designated Phantom, existed in no official records and had been built using technology that wouldn't be publicly acknowledged for another decade. Its hull was composed of adaptive metamaterials that could mimic the electromagnetic signature of common space debris, while its propulsion system generated no detectable exhaust signature. Sarah spent 12 hours familiarizing herself with systems that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. The ship's AI was more sophisticated than anything in the regular fleet, capable of independent tactical analysis and real-time adaptation to changing mission parameters. The vessel's primary advantage is complete invisibility to most scanning systems, explained Chief Engineer Torres, the only other person authorized to know the ship's full capabilities. The disadvantage is that most of these systems are prototypes. If something breaks during your mission, there's no manual and no repair procedures. Sarah ran through the ship's weapon systems, noting the unusual combination of human technology and captured alien equipment. The builders had created something unprecedented, a vessel capable of fighting enemies who had never encountered its specific capabilities. "How did you acquire some of these systems?" she asked, examining what appeared to be a Corvin plasma cannon integrated with human targeting computers. "Officially, we didn't. Unofficially, Phoenix Group has been conducting technology acquisition missions for 5 years. The aliens aren't the only ones capable of intelligence operations." The implications were staggering. While humanity had been presenting itself as a peaceful, diplomatically minded species, Special Forces units have been secretly studying and adapting alien military technology. The galaxy's perception of human capabilities was deliberately understated. Sarah's mission briefing included intelligence that had been gathered through methods she didn't ask about. The Zephyrian research station operated on predictable schedules, with shift changes every 12 hours and supply deliveries from nearby colonies twice weekly. Most importantly, the station's defenses were designed to repel fleet-scale attacks, not infiltration by a single undetectable vessel. "Your primary objective is Marcus's rescue," Commander Blake reminded her. "But, Sarah, if the opportunity presents itself to gather intelligence about their psychological warfare research, that information could save thousands of lives." "Understood. What about extraction?" "That's entirely up to you. The ship has enough fuel for a direct return to human space, but you'll be crossing 3 Zephyrian patrol zones without support." Sarah checked her equipment one final time. The suit she wore was another piece of technology that officially didn't exist. Environmental armor that could adapt to alien atmospheric conditions while providing enhanced strength and reflexes. Her weapons included both human designs and captured alien technology modified for human use. "There's one more thing," Blake said as she prepared to depart. "Intelligence suggests the Zephyrians may have been in contact with other species about expanding their psychological warfare program. If this research station is destroyed, it could disrupt plans that extend far beyond your husband's situation." The suggestion hung in the air like a tactical objective that couldn't be officially stated. Sarah understood. Sometimes the most effective rescue operations involved ensuring that the threat could never be repeated. The journey to Zephyrian space took 4 days, during which Sarah refined her infiltration plan using the ship's advanced tactical simulators. The AI had constructed detailed models of the research station based on long-range scans and intercepted communications, allowing her to practice approach routes and identify potential security weaknesses. Operator Chun, the AI, said as they entered the target system, "I am detecting unusual energy signatures from the research station. The patterns suggest experimental technology not present in our intelligence files." Sarah studied the sensor readings, noting power fluctuations that seemed to pulse in organic rhythms. Whatever the Zephyrians were doing to Marcus, it required enormous amounts of energy. "How long until we reach insertion distance?" 6 hours, 17 minutes at current stealth velocity. Recommend final approach during the station's night cycle when security patrols are reduced. Sarah spent the remaining time reviewing everything she knew about Zephyrian psychology and combat capabilities. Her husband had taught her that successful negotiations required understanding alien thought processes. The same principle applied to combat operations. The Zephyrians were hive-minded but not completely collective. Individual initiative was possible, but rare, usually emerging only under extreme stress. Their technology blended biological and mechanical systems in ways human science was still trying to understand. Most importantly, they had no experience fighting humans in direct combat. That would change soon. The research station loomed larger as Phantom approached, its biomechanical structure resembling a massive organism feeding on the gas giant's atmospheric resources. Sarah counted dozens of docking bays, defensive weapon clusters, and what appeared to be sensory organs designed to detect approaching threats. None of them registered her presence. Initiating final approach, Sarah whispered, though the ship's stealth systems would prevent anyone from detecting her voice. Beginning infiltration sequence. The insertion went flawlessly. Phantom attached itself to the station's hull like a parasitic organism, using adaptive camouflage to blend with the alien architecture. Sarah's suit synchronized with the ship's environmental systems, analyzing the station's atmosphere and adjusting her life support accordingly. The hull cutting took 12 minutes, creating an entry point that would seal itself after her passage. Sarah found herself in a maintenance corridor that pulsed with organic lighting, the walls themselves seeming to breathe with the station's mysterious life functions. Her suit's scanner immediately began mapping the internal layout while monitoring for Zephyrian life signs. The station was larger than intelligence reports had suggested, with multiple levels extending deep into its core structure. Finding Marcus would require systematic searching unless she could access the facility's information systems. The first Zephyrian she encountered was a maintenance worker in the lower engineering section. Sarah's enhanced reflexes allowed her to neutralize the alien silently, using pressure points her combat instructors had identified through captured anatomical data. The body would be discovered eventually, but she needed time to locate Marcus before the station went into full alert. The Zephyrians' access codes provided entry to local computer systems, though the biomechanical interface was unlike anything in human technology. Sarah's suit AI translated the alien data streams, revealing the station's true purpose. Research Station Hive 7 wasn't just studying psychological warfare techniques. They were developing methods for large-scale mental conditioning of entire populations, using captured subjects from dozens of species as test subjects. Marcus was designated as Human Subject Prime in experiments designed to identify the most effective psychological pressure points for his species. The location data showed him in Laboratory Complex Theta, 3 levels deeper in the station's core structure. But the access route would take her through the main research areas where security would be heaviest. Sarah smiled grimly as she studied the facility layout. The Zephyrians had made their station's internal structure as complex as possible, assuming that confusion would deter infiltrators. They hadn't planned for someone with Special Forces navigation training and a burning desire for revenge. The laboratory levels were a nightmare of organic architecture and alien technology. Sarah moved through corridors that seemed to shift and adapt around her, past chambers containing research equipment she couldn't identify and didn't want to understand. The life signs detector in her suit registered dozens of Zephyrian researchers and security personnel, their movement patterns following predictable patrol routes. She avoided contact when possible and eliminated threats when necessary. Each neutralized alien bought her more time before the station's security realized they had an intruder. Sarah's count was up to 7 when she finally reached Laboratory Complex Theta. Through the transparent barriers, she could see Marcus strapped to what appeared to be a biomechanical examination table. Alien devices monitored his vital signs while other equipment she didn't recognize directed various forms of energy at his head and torso. His eyes were open but unfocused, suggesting some form of sedation or mental conditioning. The sight triggered a rage that Sarah channeled into cold calculation. She had found her husband. Now she needed to extract him and ensure that no other human would ever suffer the same fate. The laboratory's security systems were more sophisticated than anything she'd encountered on the station. Biolocks, energy barriers, and what appeared to be autonomous defense systems designed to protect valuable research subjects. Breaking in would require all her technical training and most of her remaining equipment. It would also alert every security officer on the station to her presence. Sarah checked her chronometer. She had been inside the station for 47 minutes. Phantom was programmed to wait 6 hours before automatically departing to prevent capture. That gave her plenty of time for rescue and extraction, or enough time to send the kind of message that would prevent future attacks on human diplomatic personnel. She began placing explosive charges throughout the laboratory complex with surgical precision. The laboratory's security breach triggered alarms throughout Research Station Hive 7, but Sarah was already inside the containment area when emergency protocols activated. Marcus appeared unconscious, his vital signs weak, but stable according to the alien monitoring equipment. Marcus, she whispered, carefully removing the biomechanical restraints that held him to the examination table. I'm here. I'm getting you out. His eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on her face through the visor of her combat suit. For a moment, confusion clouded his expression. Then, recognition sparked, followed by something that looked like relief mixed with disbelief. Sarah? How did you? His voice was hoarse, barely audible above the station's emergency alerts. Long story. Can you move? Marcus tested his limbs, wincing as circulation returned to areas that had been restricted by alien restraints. I think so. Sarah, they were doing things to my mind, trying to map human psychological responses. They have data on dozens of our diplomatic personnel. Sarah helped him sit up, noting the various monitoring devices that had been attached to his head and chest. Some appear to be simple medical sensors, but others looked more invasive. The idea of aliens experimenting on her husband's mind triggered another surge of cold rage. We'll deal with that later. Right now, we need to move. The laboratory complex had 3 exit routes, all of which were now sealed by emergency blast doors. Sarah's explosives would clear a path, but the detonations would also announce their location to every security team on the station. She had perhaps 2 minutes before Zephyrian soldiers surrounded the area. Marcus, I need you to stay close and follow my lead exactly. This isn't going to be a quiet extraction. He nodded, testing his balance as he stood. What's the plan? Get you out safely. Everything else is secondary. The first explosions shattered the laboratory's main barrier, sending fragments of biomechanical material throughout the complex. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red as atmosphere rushed through the breach. Sarah's suit automatically adjusted to the pressure change, while extending an emergency air supply to Marcus. Zephyrian security forces appeared at the far end of the corridor within seconds of the detonation. Sarah engaged them with weapons that had never been tested in actual combat, alien technology modified for human use, producing effects that surprised even her. The Corvin plasma rifle, integrated with human targeting systems, proved devastatingly effective against biomechanical armor. Stay behind me, she ordered Marcus as they moved through the damaged laboratory complex. My suit can handle their weapons, but you're vulnerable to everything. The running battle through Research Station Hive 7 became a demonstration of why human special forces operatives were trained for impossible situations. Sarah moved through alien corridors with lethal efficiency, neutralizing security teams while protecting Marcus and gathering intelligence about the station's research programs. The data she retrieved from laboratory computers painted a horrifying picture of Zephyrian intentions. The psychological warfare research was part of a larger plan to mentally condition human populations before attempting direct conquest. Marcus's capture had been a field test for techniques they planned to use on Earth itself. Sarah, there's something else, Marcus said as they reached a maintenance shaft that would provide access to the station's outer hull. They've been in contact with other species. The Corvin Empire, some mercenary groups from the Outer Rim. This isn't just about Zephyrian expansion. The intelligence confirmed Sarah's worst suspicions. Research Station Hive 7 wasn't just a threat to human diplomatic personnel. It was the center of a conspiracy that could threaten Earth's independence and possibly human civilization itself. She activated the final sequence of explosive charges as they climbed toward the station's exterior. The detonations wouldn't destroy the entire facility, but they would eliminate decades of research and send a message that would resonate throughout Zephyrian space. Phantom had remained undetected during the infiltration, its stealth systems allowing it to monitor Zephyrian communications while preparing for emergency extraction. The ship's AI had analyzed enemy response patterns and identified the optimal departure window. Extraction in 90 seconds, Sarah announced as they reached the hull breach she'd created during infiltration. Emergency acceleration once we're aboard. It's going to be uncomfortable. Marcus managed a weak smile. After the last few days, discomfort sounds wonderful. The transfer to Phantom required precise timing as Sarah's explosives reached their final countdown. The research station's internal structure began collapsing as critical support systems overloaded, sending shockwaves through the biomechanical framework. Emergency acceleration pushed them both against the ship's internal bracing as Phantom fled Research Station Hive 7. Through the viewports, Sarah could see the facility's death throes as laboratories collapsed and research equipment was consumed by cascading explosions. The entire psychological warfare program just became useless data, she said with satisfaction. They'll have to start over from scratch, and now they know what happens when they target human families. The journey back to human space took 6 days, during which Marcus recovered from his ordeal, and Sarah debriefed him about the aliens' research methods. The intelligence he provided would revolutionize humanity's understanding of Zephyrian capabilities and intentions. More importantly, word of the research station's destruction spread through alien communication networks faster than any official diplomatic protest. The message was unmistakable. Humanity protected its own with capabilities that had never been publicly demonstrated. The Galactic Council's emergency session convened within hours of their return to Earth. Ambassador Marcus Chun, now recovered and back in his diplomatic role, found himself addressing the same assembly where his ordeal had begun. High Counselor Zektar was notably absent. Intelligence reports suggested he had been recalled to Zephyrian homeworlds for consultation regarding the failed psychological warfare initiative. The human delegation appreciates the Council's concern about recent events, Marcus said, his voice carrying new authority earned through surviving alien experimentation. However, we want to emphasize that humanity considers attacks on diplomatic personnel to be acts of war, not political statements. The chamber was silent as representatives from dozens of species absorbed the implications. Marcus's rescue and the destruction of Research Station Hive 7 had demonstrated capabilities that forced every alien government to recalculate their assumptions about human military power. Furthermore, Marcus continued, any species contemplating similar actions should understand that humanity's response will be swift, decisive, and personally motivated. We protect our families. We protect our diplomats. And we have resources that have never been fully revealed in peaceful negotiations. The Thoraxian ambassador, speaking for the neutral coalition, formally condemned the Zephyrian attack and praised the restraint shown by human forces in limiting their retaliation to the specific facility responsible for the crimes. What wasn't mentioned in the official proceedings was the complete intelligence archive Sarah had retrieved during her infiltration. The data revealed the scope of anti-human conspiracy among several alien species, providing Earth's government with actionable intelligence about threats that had been developing in secret. Later, as Marcus and Sarah sat in their quarters aboard the diplomatic transport returning to Earth, they finally had time to process what had happened. The Zephyrians made a fundamental error, Marcus observed. They understood human psychology well enough to predict emotional responses, but they completely misunderstood what happens when that emotion is guided by professional military training. Sarah smiled, still wearing the calm expression that had terrified alien soldiers throughout Research Station Hive 7. They learned something important about humanity today. We're not just a diplomatic species that happens to have military capabilities. When threatened, we become a military species that chooses to use diplomacy. Do you think they'll try something like this again? Not against diplomatic personnel. But, Sarah, this intelligence suggests they're planning something larger. The psychological warfare research was just one component of a broader strategy. Sarah nodded, already analyzing threat assessments and response scenarios. Then, humanity will adapt accordingly. The galaxy has been underestimating our capabilities because we've chosen to emphasize our peaceful intentions. Recent events may require us to demonstrate more of what we're actually capable of. 6 months later, the Galactic Council established new protocols for protecting diplomatic personnel with enforcement mechanisms that included immediate military response to attacks on accredited representatives. The Zephyrian Alliance formally apologized for the rogue actions of extremist elements within their government. Research Station Hive 7 was never rebuilt. The site remained as a monument to the consequences of underestimating human determination and resourcefulness. Throughout the galaxy, alien species began reassessing their intelligence files on humanity. The peaceful diplomats who had seemed so reasonable in negotiations were backed by military capabilities that had never been fully displayed in public forums. Marcus Chun returned to his diplomatic duties with enhanced authority and respect from alien colleagues who now understood that attacking human representatives carried costs that extended far beyond political embarrassment. Sarah Chun officially remained a training instructor at the Luna facility, though certain classified missions required her expertise in situations that would never appear in public records. And somewhere in the depths of space, engineers worked on improvements to technology that officially didn't exist, preparing for threats that hopefully would never materialize. The galaxy had learned something important about humanity. They were willing to coexist peacefully with any species that respected the same principle. But they were equally willing to demonstrate why that respect was not optional. The message resonated across 1,000 worlds. Humanity protected its own. And humanity's definition of protection extended far beyond what any alien species had imagined possible.